The end is in sight, but we still have some fantastic races to go until then. Round 11 out of 12 in the FF1600 series here on Maconi Entertainment is here. I'm Harry Burrows alongside Ron Barnes as ever to take us through a track that is famous in some ways but a little compressed in others. You may be able to see with your eyes, we got a dry race after 4 splits in a row of rain, so it's going to be a bit tricky to pack these cars in together, but at least they'll keep their grip in place.
Yeah, I think these racers are quite happy about the fact that they have got a dry race on their hands for this broadcasted race, but it's still going to be a challenging one that lies ahead for these competitors. May not be the longest track that we're running at. Frankly, it's probably one of the shortest that we have run at all season long, but it has the least amount of turns, I'm pretty sure. 8 in all around this track. It's compressed, it's tough. This is a tough circuit, really with no brakes thrown into the mix as well. Outside that start-finish straightaway, these racers are always battling something, so I gotta wonder in this race that lies ahead, despite the fact the track may be dry, I still think these racers are probably going to be in for a tough ride here for week 11.
Beatrice's rain dance was proven false for the first time in history. One thing that probably might not get proven false is the size of Rens Brookman's lead. With 2 races to go and drop weeks on the horizon, he might be tempted to just tell us to give him the championship already, but you see right behind him, a battle that's dead even on points going into these last 2 rounds. Still plenty to play for many drivers. And Medma's in for a shout. And look out for that battle between Dan Blake and Graham Rory Hunt. Only one on the track here today, but still plenty of opportunities for drivers to get one over on the others. Qualifying underway on the circuit right now, and quite a popular time slot, as you can imagine, for a free track, especially now that it ends up in the dry. About 4.4k SOF feels meager by our standards. Drivers getting going on a second lap right now. Qualifying is flying by quicker than I can keep count of it.
Yeah, I feel like we're quite privileged here in this series to say that the 4.4k strength of field that we've got for this event is on the lower end. Been a fantastic season up to this point, some rather good racetracks. This one, though, I gotta wonder what these racers are really thinking about. You can see the vital turn number 4, that is the dogleg detour that these racers take to spit you out halfway onto that back straightaway right before this sort of chicane. It's basically 2 kinks welded together. The way I always describe it is, it's a normal chicane if it just got stretched out a bit too much because of overuse. That's basically what's like heading off through that part of the track. I wonder what the general thought is around this track. The first time we've really seen this short course get used, the first time I ever did a broadcast around here was just about 24 hours ago with the Weekend Warriors. It's just not a layout that gets a lot of use at a track that has only really come to prominence here on iRacing over the past couple of seasons just because it's become a part of base content.
Certainly some unique questions to ask about the way drivers are going to tackle this. You can see the sort of awkward, tough turnaround. 17 drivers have hit the track and only 1 more has yet to set them. No way I was going to get this one up to speed. 1 minute 05 lap times on the track. Fraser Smith so far the fastest. Only Rens Brookman could go faster, but he got a 105.8 the last time around, and it wasn't even legal on the line. Look out for slip along some of these corners. Very, very long radius corners. Get tricky in this car as you sort of lie on the edge. Coming across the line, Rens Brookman hits it for 4th, and with that, we're going to race into a starting grid just as quickly as these drivers race onto the track. It's a quick turnaround on the track today, I've got to say that. Anytime today, you know, sometimes the software cooperates. What can I say? Fraser Smith lines up on pole, Ian Joyner in P2. Frederick Surley, one of the best starting positions I've seen in him in this championship, lines up P3. Rens Brookman in 4th, and Medma lines up in 5th next to Don Raises. Jordan Gronkowski lines up in 7th next to Alexander Istad, and Daniel Tufts is in 9th next to Graham Rory Hunt in 10th.
Then looking through the final few starters in this starting grid, we've got Nikita Abramov starting this race in the number 11 car, fittingly in P11. Christopher Cash right alongside in P12. Fabio Berchtold will start this race in P13 alongside Dima Sirkin, and I believe only a few more starters. Marno Noldis in P15. Guy Robertson starting this race in P16 with Luke Lodge rounding at your 17 starters in this race that lies ahead. A very nice. That's the first time I think I've ever seen an Alan Kulwicki tribute scheme on a Formula 1600 car. But no, this is going to be a fun one here, Howie. Not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities for these racers on paper, but it's still going to be a track where these racers, as we have seen all throughout this championship, will throw haymakers at their competitors, race in and race out.
I think there could be room for a lot of chaos this way to come out here on the track. With lots of cars and very little space to share. Only a couple left the grid, including our pole sitter, Fraser Smith, who can't race next week. He'll be at Donington Park in person, funnily enough, rather than on the virtual track. 20 minutes of running could be almost 20 laps on the track. 17 cars hit the grid, and we go green right about now. First two corners on this track are going to run as we know them. Everybody lining up on the right side for that daring double sweep. Watch the humps on the inside and outside. Everyone lines up single file there except for Daniel Tufts, who washes out to the outside, goes further back. It sounds like most drivers got it through clean, other than Dima Sirkin and Guy Robertson in the back, who took some contact. Further up down the line, slipstream chances down this straight are going to be evaporated very, very quickly. You might be able to make a dramatic dive into this little dog-leg U-turn, but right now, I think drivers are looking out for themselves. That is Jordan Gonkowski in the red and white car on the right-hand side, alongside Thomas Reises, who first time I've actually seen him on the track this season, to my knowledge. A bit of a gap building up further ahead to Ann Medmer.
As we see these racers up at the front negotiating the final two turns, 8 turns around this track, and that's the final one right there. Zeppelin curve around this racetrack, going to be another part of this very challenging circuit that these racers have to lie ahead here today. I appreciate the way you described it there, though, Howie. The U-turn onto the back straightaway to make this short course what it is. It's rather awkward of a bend heading around there in these cars. It basically feels completely flat as a pancake as you head your way off through that part of the track. Also feels like the track really falls away from you as well. Feels like there's a little bit of negative camber as you head your way off into that turn, which is a complete contrast to that turn number 3. Got 3 kind of similar-ish hairpins to start off this lap. Can be a little bit monotonous for these racers, but just try and manage the track well. This is one of those racetracks where you can't really draft, because outside that start-finish straightaway, there's really not enough time to slipstream past your competitors. You just need to master this racetrack more than anything.
It's mostly about mastering yourself and looking for weaknesses in others. This top 3 lining up quite close together. Frederick Surley holding out well here in P3, 0.43 of a second gap to Ian Joyner. Still a little bit of squabbling further back. Cash and Rory Hunt trading positions side by side into the final turn, which goes a little bit wider than you'd expect. Static camera across the start finish showing a lot. It's Jordan Gonkowski who's fastest, and a too wide opportunity into turn 1 opens it up for Ian Joyner, but then the outside isn't a great place to be to get that run. Alexander Istad dropping significantly, just got passed by several on the entry. Really just diving the inside on that turn 1 doesn't really get you what you want out there on turn 2. That was almost Renz Brookman flying into an unusual spot. Yeah, and that's a problem with the opening series of corners around this racetrack. Doesn't matter what layout you're running on unless it's a C course, as there's moments a little bit farther behind involving Graham Rory Hunt and Nikita Abramov. He's dropping down like a stone thrown into a pond. Same could be said about Graham Hunt, who's now slotted in P13 with some dust getting kicked up in the air, and these racers starting to throw haymakers at each other all around this pack. That problem with turn number 1 and 2 going to be prevalent from the drop of the green through to the fall of the checkered. You gotta be commanding when you go for a move off into there. And even if you're running by yourself, it can be a little bit tricky, as that's Graham Rory Hunt actually making the call to come down pit lane. Now, considering the length of this series, it's not like the Weekend Warriors where you have to come down pit lane. It's actually a meatball flag in the air for him, so that's why he's coming into the pit. Some damage on that machine. I believe this may have been side-by-side contact with Nikita Aronbov. At least it is. It's up further down the road. That 12 car spins, and that's incredibly unlucky to catch the contact from that, and that's what's going to take him down and out. I'm hearing controversy on the chat nonetheless, as I think another big incident just kicked off between Guy Robertson and Demis Serkin. Very possibly, as Graham Rory Hunt also got a black flag on pit entry, so consider pit exit. So consider his race well and truly over in this 20-minute time span. Here's Robertson and Serkin. A real dive up the inside by Demis Serkin does not end well for either car.
It's a pretty catastrophic iRacing glue involved in the midst of all of that as well. You brought it up a little bit earlier on in this broadcast, Howie, the curbs as you head your way off through turns number 1 and 2, and really all around this track for that matter. The anti-cut curbs gonna pop up these lightweight Formula 1600 cars into the air and pop them into low Earth orbit as here comes a move down the inside attempted from Ian Joyner on Fraser Smith. It's a battle for the race lead that we've been expecting for quite some time, but look at Frederick Sorley right there to pounce. Don't want to talk about the drop of the 13 car too much, because it seems like whenever we do, and whenever we see him in one of these broadcasted races, the falling anvils come out for him. But he's running in third right now and may have had a shot to gain a couple of more spots with those two duking it out into 1 and 2.
So a lot of this track so far is proving a bit of an adage here that if you don't do crazy stuff, you're really going to struggle to get around people. Longest passing opportunities on this track have all been robbed from you. Domnas Raises also has an incident of his own, by the way. Saw him dropping down the order, one of the first times I've recalled seeing him on the track for this SOF. I'm really loving seeing the field grow still, but a very wide run into turn 1, a bit too much speed. The gravel ain't going to help, but that was a little bit settled by itself. It's a corner that's very easy to overcook, get too dramatic into, and then all of a sudden realize you've gone too far a little bit too late. Fraser Smith continues to lead over Ian Joyner and Frederick Surley in the top 3. Rens Brookman's in 4th, Medmer's in 5th, and Tufts is in 6th for Cash, having set the fastest lap.
And, elaborating on the point that you mentioned, talking about turns number 1 and 2 around this track, that is not the only configuration that you can use of turns number 1 and 2. If anyone has ever been on Motorsports YouTube, you've probably seen the clip of the old touring car racer John Cleland saying that whoever designed the other version of turn number 1 and 2 here at Oschersleben should be taken into a dark room and beat about the head. Basically, when it comes to turn number 1 and 2, the opening series of corners around this track, there are 2 dogs in it. There is one dog that wants to kill you, the other dog that will make you want to die.
Back in my day, I know I can't believe I'm just saying that, but back in my day, I broadcasted the Skip Barber series where they went to the alternate turn 1, and I gotta say that no cars went airborne in that turn. Remarkably well behaved from the field. I'm proud of all of them. Ian Joyner gets the inside this time around, but everything about this track, you get the inside on one turn and it's robbed away from the next. Momentum is still on Fraser's side this time as he enters the next turn. And he lines himself right up on the inside for turn 4. Just very good defensive driving here is holding off Joyner's possible attack. I would be a little bit wary as the tension starts to rise throughout this race. 19 laps is the high estimate for how many will get around here. We're only on 7, so we're not even at the halfway mark. People are biding their time and being patient. People are driving in a line, and they're going to do some crazier dive bombs. We've already seen a bit of a crazy dive bomb or two go too far around here, but eventually it's going to start mattering for a race win. As far as how it goes now, Fraser Smith leads by the stripe again.
And, talking about the way this race is going to materialize, how these racers will slowly but surely build up their levels of aggression, we go back to the point about the fact that this is the smallest track that we've really been at all season long. Lap times just a tick over that 1-minute barrier. Frankly, any quicker race cars and we'd probably be below a minute long. So this is a short track, very short. So these racers, it got to go into a race like this with a different mindset compared to a track like, I don't know, we'll say VIR or Sonoma, some of the other tracks that we've had up to this point in the season that are a bit on the longer end where you don't have too many laps. It feels a little bit more grating when you're running there, it being here on Maconi Entertainment, we cover a lot of oval races, and Ali, we have done our fair share of full-length NASCAR Xfinity races that you can catch in the Friday Night Light series here on Maconi. But when you think of those races, holy cow, is someone throwing a haymaker right in front? That's Ann Medma trying to go for a dive on Renz Brookman off into the final turn. That could have ended in disaster. Now Daniel Tufts looking to bounce back as well and gain a couple of spots. That's still the battle for P2 that Tufts is involved in when it comes to that championship, so any sort of spot matters for him. But no, when it comes to races like this where it's a shorter track and it feels like you're running lap after lap after lap after lap, it may be the same when it comes to time, but it also feels a little bit longer in some racers' heads.
Certainly, the act of repetition can very much make you feel like you are repeating yourself many, many, many times. And eventually the fatigue sets in and you sort of lose your mind on the spot. Championship battle is between Medma here and, not between Medma, it's between Medma and Gunkowski. Daniel Tufts, who's going to try and battle and clear. Run a little bit wide on those exits. Gotta say, watch that off-track limit. And remember, ducks out of line as this battle gets aggressive. Frederick Surley also taking a line through the gravel. That was all just a little bit dicey by my taste. I'd like to get the replay shot. I'm amazed every driver kept it together pretty well here. Bit of a bold pass, and Medma tries to stick it up in the inside himself. Doesn't quite materialize there either. Finally ducks out of it. Enjoying his fastest on the lap, and I think we might be seeing side by side for the lead right now. So talk about good timing on my watch. Fraser Smith threatening out of turn 2. It might still get robbed by 3 and 4 though.
And going for some moves heading down into turn number 3 around this track, it's a double-edged sword because it is a very inviting spot to get a move done, a decent braking opportunity. It's wide enough whereby you can make it work, and plus with the other camber that you have to help you out heading off through that turn, if you try and sneak a wheel or 2 or 3 or 4 around the outside heading off through that part of the track, you can make it work somewhat well, but you got to be wary about that outside curb on corner or exit. If you hit that, you can really pull off a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 move and grind the underside of your car. As we take a look at a moment involving Christopher Cash down into that exact same corner, and that's the other end of it as well. You can carry a whole lot of speed adding off into that part of the track. I could best compare it to, it's fitting that we just saw a Formula 1 race there and had some moments of the sorts, as that's Alexander Istad with the spin heading off through turn number 4. We're just going to compare turn number 3 around this track to turn number 3 at Zandvoort. Very inviting to carry a whole lot of speed, and sometimes when it goes bad, it goes really, really bad.
That's Christopher Cash getting tangled up in 2 FilmBuild.no team drivers at the same time, one after another. Istad a little bit more self-responsible for that spin, but that was one into another, and you may have noticed that Surly has very much dropped down, still in this race in P7, but lost that pace after that initial incident and really dropped down like a rock. Now, this battle for the lead is very, very interesting and very, very enticing. I might even come as close to saying that there's a real chance this boils over by the end of this race and Ian Joyner comes in to claim this win this season. Fraser Smith, not a driver that has had incredible luck, has really had some run-ins and some controversies many times he's hit the track. One of his greatest rivals of the season isn't here. This time, Joyner really sends it through down the straight, has the run, gets it done and clear. Really took getting that work before the straight. You sounded pretty panicked at the fort.
Yeah, as soon as I saw Fraser Smith coming in, he looked like he was coming into turn number 2 like an Exocet missile. I was like, don't tell me we're going to have contact being made. It was tense as they headed their way off into 1 with Joyner and Smith nearly making contact there, and that was the moment as they converged off through there. Yet again, another part of the challenge about that section of the track as a hold off at that point is Fraser Smith has fought back big time, and into turn number 5, he will jump back into the race lead. Fantastic stuff from Smith with this battle. Certainly getting intense between these two. Renz Brookman has really come alive over the past couple of weeks here in this series, looking to end off this season on a high note as he's running in 3rd, has a good shot to get done if those two go off the track in a cloud of dust, smoke, and steam. But turn 1 and 2, it's so odd and so difficult to go side by side through there effectively and clean because there's so many different lines these racers can take. It's look at Fraser Smith trying to block off that run as Joyner swaps down to the inside line, and here we go. Look at Brookman now trying to make something work on the inside of Joyner. Joyner Joyner stuck on the outside as he come out of turn number 2, keeping that momentum rolling. You brought up a fantastic point, Howard. I think there's a lot of truth said in just those two, Fraser Smith and Ian Joyner. You can sense that it's getting close to that battle completely boiling over.
Add that to the words of wisdom. They're not here all the time. Rens Brookman's shark waiting to pounce and claim another win, I think, or at least another trip to the interview booth with Ron Miles after missing out last week. So, you know, that's a treat and reward in itself. Behind Gunkowski hasn't made up much distance, 1.2 seconds the gap, but he's made a big enough gap over Tufts and Medma that he's not terribly scared right now. Through at the field, Frederick Surley lines up in P7, Christopher Cash a second behind in 8th. Fabio Birchtal's running quite a bit alone after an incident early. Marcel Noldus has just been sitting in 10th place pace. Domas Races had a bit of a failing early on, just about holding off Alexander Istad right now. Nikita Aramov also had a spin. Luke Lodge we've not seen as much of. And Dima Sirkin involved in that car contact earlier, and Guy Robertson making up last. Graham Rory Hunt quitting out of the session after his black flag on pit exit. Just turned a bad day to worse on very unlucky network damage. Top 3 remains as it does, but we are running out of laps. I make a tremendous risk by putting this up here on the screen, but I think it's going to be right. 6 to go this time around, 5 on the next, and each time it's going to be another shot to make a move down that straight. That start-finish line is not that far down. You really want to get the move done during the lap.
Yeah, this is a sort of racetrack where unless there's some sort of contact and drama heading off through the final turn, you don't really have the opportunity to have a good close photo finish. There's the line right there, just not a long run up heading off through there. So unless you try and do the old boot scoot and boogie on your competitors, not going to work. And that is, here comes Joyner fighting back on the inside, down into 1 and 2. He's not going to be stuck on the outside line, gets shown the door, and it gets a little bit of contact being made. Now look at Rens Brookman trying to fight back. I think that was a touch between those two. Brookman now jumps his way up into second. Joyner, I know, is a very quick racer in these FF1600 cars, whether it be on the Weekend Warrior side of things where he's a past champion, or here in these officials where he is bad fast week in and week out. He is trying to throw haymakers at all sorts of competitors, Fraser Smith being the one here today. And I gotta say, Smith, I'm not really too big of a fan of the moves heading down the start-finish straightaway, if I'm being honest. That was a bit more tame compared to previous laps, but there have been small little wiggles right as Ian Joyner is drawn alongside. I'm not personally a fan of that, but again, I'm just a commentator. The hell do I know?
I think the moves are going to get more and more desperate down the start-finish straight if anyone is in range, but Fraser Smith might feel a little bit better this lap with a 4/10 gap behind him to the next driver. One person's going to want that back, though, is Ian Joyner. Let's go on board into a lap and see how this runs out for him. A lot of slip by Rens Brookman to 1 and 2. These cars very slippy, and big checkups there from Joyner as he just tries to avoid running into the back of him. That's turn 2. Now down into 3. The tiniest run, you're not going to get enough, and you're not going to be given an inside line very easily. But every inside turns into an outside as we take this compressed hairpin. This is usually our longest straight before the big chicane, but instead you don't really get much of a long straight, you just get big chicane. This is the one that often throws me off my game the most. Rens Brookman started P4, Ian Joyner started P2. Most he's going to want is some of that back, and he hasn't quite run into his opportunity yet. Let's see how the exit of the final turn treats him. He's been twice on the bumper of Rens Brookman, has just had to sort of either push him or check up just to get through. Rens has been very good at power positioning in these corners. You get the feeling that Joyner's a little bit faster but can't pass. In fact, I saw a little smidgen of possible nose damage on the front of Joyner. That is iRacing nose damage on the front of that FF1600. When it's pushed in just that little bit, that is going to affect your aero.
Yeah, it may not be the biggest visual change in the world, but in these aero-sensitive cars, that can be a huge difference. Just a small little nudge in. Sound effect definitely required and all that. That is going to hurt him big time. I think that could be part of the reason why Ian Joyner said, you know what? This is not going to be my race to win. I'm going to let you two really duke it out. Right now, I think the best way that Ian Joyner's race could go realistically is he remains in touch with those racers right in front and make sure that these three of Gronkowski, Tufts, and Medba stay firmly behind. That gap between those racers not too terribly big as it stands right now, less than 9/10 of a second, teetering around that 8.5 to 9/10 of a second barrier. That is not a comfortable gap at all. Thankfully, this isn't a super draft-heavy racetrack, and there's not a whole lot of time left to go in this race either. So I think that may be a saving grace for Ian Joyner, and he still has a draft of the two cars right in front. But with 2 laps left to go here, Howie, I wonder how long it's going to be until Renz Brookman maybe goes for a move on Fraser Smith.
Look at the maths on those drop weeks. I anticipate the top 4 getting the compliment for the top 4 worth of points. Maybe Daniel Tufts also gets his when you counter in the lower split, because we've had quite a few of them. If they stand, we remain at a 1-point gap going into Donington Park, which is quite unbelievable. That's a Gronkowski Tufts battle that's happening just behind. Both of them are going to want every last bit of that position. Renz Brookman's going to be happy with where he sits, although winning is always more sweet. And Ian Joyner only has what I believe should be 1 more lap. There's a white flag in the air, so we know it for sure. 1 more lap to try and make all the moves you possibly can. We'll keep an eye on this top 2. I think Fraser Smith is safe. Ian Joyner's gonna now make that move for the inside, but he's not got the run to get alongside on entry into turn 1 and 2. Further behind, Gronkowski ran away very, very well from Tufts and might be able to take that P4 on the line. Only a few more turns to go for Joyner. You can see he's sticking his nose out of line, but I think that damaged nose is gonna hurt his top speed potential. He might be hitting a ceiling here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Ian Joyner will be able to cut through the air well enough to get a move done on either Renz Brookman or most certainly a race leader, Fraser Smith, who heads his way off into the 5 and 6 chicane for the last time here. Renz Brookman not really throwing too much at this battle, and I think that's a smart call for him, leading the championship as comfortably as he is. Doesn't really need to force this issue too much. Instead, he's got to be right there in P2 comfortably at the end.
Unless anything horrific happens down this straight, I think that's the lock-in. Fraser Smith finally claims another win to his name. From first to first, all the way around, a hard-to-pass on track. Surprisingly dry, but it certainly did test car control. Gronkowski's finished as ahead of Daniel Tufts, with Ann Medmer finishing 6th and Frederick Surley 7th. We'll get the rest of your finishing results very, very soon. This show feels like it's quicker than the others, which is a little bit crazy given that we lost about 4 minutes of qualifying, and every race is, would you believe it, Ron, the same length of time.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that. It goes back to what I was mentioning a little bit earlier on. I guess the opposite case for us as broadcasters, that being such a short lap, it feels like the race is really frenetic and really just bang, 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 bang when it comes to the stuff that's throwing our way. But pretty solid one here at Oschersleben, the first dry race that we've had here in this series, at least for the non-broadcasted races here today. But the dry track here at Oschersleben putting on a fun one.
Fraser Smith finishes in P1 ahead of Renz Brookman in P2, Ian Joyner in 3 and Gronkowski in 4th. Tufts finishes 5th and Ann Medmer finishes 6th ahead of Frederick Surley, Christopher Cash, Fabio Birchtold and Alexander Istad. Thomas Antas Reyes finishes 11th ahead of Martin Arnoldos, Dina Sirkin, Nikita Aramov, Guy Robertson, Luke Lodge and Graham Rory Hunt. These are unofficial standings, and I'll let you know who gets to keep their plus points right now, because the lower splits results are on their way very soon. As a reminder, if you get more iRacing points than someone in the top split, you do qualify to take their position from them. If this top 3 or 4 stand, which I think they're likely to, I'll get confirmation of that later, we have a 1-point gap going into our finale. That's a result of the drop weeks that are removing your old results just as quickly as you're getting new ones. We might as well crown Renz Brookman, although don't call it a comeback. He's had a fantastic championship, and that's the exact sort of result he needed.
Yeah, it really is. Lots of racers having a good day here today at Oschersleben as we get to the end of the season, having good points days, whether it be getting a podium, getting a top 5, whatever the result may be to get a good one. It's going to help you out as we get to the end of this championship.
Three drivers to interview, and they showed up really, really well on time. I'm going to give you, Ron, I'm going to give you Fraser Smith to talk to our race winner.
And Fraser Smith now joining us here in the broadcast booth. Fraser, welcome in P1 in this race at Oschersleben today. How was it out there?
It was really good. Had to work for it, obviously, but it was fun and good to finally get a win after a few pole positions and bottling it.
I mean, hey, a pretty odd racetrack though to get another win. Really, I think I was joking a little bit earlier on in this broadcast how this is the second time I've ever broadcasted a race here at Oschersleben on the B course. It's a pretty odd configuration to choose for this season. What did you think of it?
To be honest, I think it suits the car. You probably wouldn't want to go around it in like a GT3 car, but it suits this. I did the race before in the soak and wet, and I actually much preferred it in the wet. But yeah, it seemed like there was place you could overtake, so that's the main thing.
I'm going through my head now. I can't even imagine how this place would be in a GTP car. That would be an experience to be sure. It's less of a go-kart track than the C configuration, which Howie and I were joking about right before this broadcast got up and live. But as we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm not going to be here next time at Donington, as you're actually going to be there on site for that race. I believe I heard correctly. So I want to ask you about your thoughts on this season as a whole.
It's been good. I've not really driven the car at all, apart from on the Mondays. So I seem to have been all right in qualifying, and then in this car, you've got to like really have your mindset to be careful when you get into fights and whatnot. But yeah, I learned my few lessons, so I'll try it again next time.
And certainly looking forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack again as we get to the end of the season and move off and look ahead into season 4. But Fraser, thank you for joining us here in the broadcast booth. Well done on the win. We'll let you give any thanks or shout outs though before we let you go and celebrate.
Yeah, I think it's just a few of my mates are watching, and my dad might be as well. So shout out to them.
And there we go. But Fraser, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. Well done on the win, and looking forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack, wherever it is in the not too far off future.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
And that right there was our race winner, Fraser Smith.
Moving on to P2, Rens Brookman. Not quite the win on a hard to pass on track, but I think if you wanted to look at a championship, that's the result you wanted to see.
Yeah, well, just looking at how close the qualifying was, first of all, I'm happy that I was among the top times. Second, I was just focusing on trying to gain some places on the track where it's extremely hard to pass. So yeah, I managed 2 of them. Quite happy to come second because Fraser was in a league of his own. So no, it was quite good. It's a lot of fun.
So you were able to take advantage of situations to get to that P2, and you were able to make some good bold passes. Was it just a case of boldness, or was it just a case of waiting and hoping?
Well, in terms of the pass on Ian, that was mostly because they were fighting in front of me, so he was forced offline by trying to make a move, and I just took the opportunity to go along the inside. Try to keep the line, which worked. But it's extremely difficult to pass a car just by itself, maybe in a draft, but yeah, I was not able to try it even.
Well, in case you were thinking about any championship pressure, I don't like saying things for sure in drop weeks, but trust me, that gap is basically unassailable by mere mortals in a week. So if you were thinking about that, you get to have a lot of fun at Donington. National layout, how's that track going to treat you?
Well, I enjoyed it very much last time. I think it's a great track with these cars and racing with these cars. So I'm very much looking forward to just the race. The championship is awesome. And that racing championship, which is a little bit different from the points you guys have in the SOF. I kind of like to hit the 2000, but yeah, that's quite tricky because I need to have a good finish in a high SOF.
Well, good to see you out there on the track. Any other thank yous or shout outs?
No, just family at home, you guys for doing the broadcast, people that make the broadcast possible, and all the drivers in here, week in, week out. Yeah, giving some awesome competition and some really good racing.
Another week, another good result. One more of the season before you get one more week off. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, thanks guys. Looking forward to.
That makes our P2, and I'll leave you then with our P3. It's Ian Joyner.
Yeah, and Ian Joyner here in the broadcast booth. Ian, welcome in P3 for you at the end of this race with a slightly upturned front nose cone. How was it out there?
It was loads of fun. What a brilliant car and track combo. Yeah, it was just really good. Really enjoyed the race with Fraser. Oh, shame it didn't get. I mean, this is a podium, right? It would have been nice. Would have been nice if Fraser had let me have the lead for more than 2 corners. But other than that, it's a really light contact with Renz as well. A bit unfortunate that was a bent nose. I couldn't really do a lot from there. But yeah, great fun race.
Yeah, and we've been hearing a lot throughout these interviews and just in the week about the challenge of this track. Not very often used is this configuration of Oschersleben. How have you found this track in the week?
To be honest, I've really enjoyed it. Renz was just saying he didn't enjoy it so much just driving it, but honestly, I quite enjoy driving it anyway. Don't really know either of the layouts here. Yeah, so I've just sort of found it relatively fun getting to know the track. And a lot of fun to race as well. I thought the first 2 corners were going to be pretty horrible to race on, to be honest, but we seem to go side by side through there over and over again, as there's actually quite a lot of space. So it mostly seemed to work out quite well. Yeah, so definitely thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I will say, touching on turn number 1 and 2 and the battling between yourself and Fraser Smith, it did look a little bit sketchy at certain points in time, but I guess Oschersleben is going to do Oschersleben things. But a pretty good weekend for you with the P3 here in this broadcasted race. And last time I think there was a broadcast of an FF1600 race at this track. I think he won it. So pretty darn good week for you here around this track. But looking ahead to next time at Donington Park on the national layouts, what are your thoughts heading there for next week?
I sort of prefer the national layout because it hasn't got that super awkward chicane. But then, having said that, the 2 extra hairpins are pretty good for overtaking. So, yeah, it's fun. It's another really good track. Obviously, a lot more drafty than this place. I think, is it dry? Kind of an absolutely.
Yeah, this was the last race of any rain chance, thankfully.
Okay. I don't know. Sort of. There's something. It's so horrendously difficult driving Donington in the wet and these cars because of the aquaplaning on the faster corners.
I broadcasted wet, Donny. That was a horrible experience.
Yeah.
I have as well.
Yeah, you can just spin in the middle of the straight all by yourself just because it just suddenly just goes. But yeah, so there's a little bit for like self-harm, like sort of just wanting to do that, just kind of sort of fun the challenge of it. But yeah, I'm sure a dry race will be really good. Great track, but it'll be different to here. A bit more drafty.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm a fan of the national layout at Donington compared to the international version, just because that final hairpin is the absolute bane of my existence on the international layout of that configuration.
Yeah, invisible corners, and no one really wants to see people just driving straight through bollards either. Never a great look.
Yeah, that's never ideal, shall we say? But Ian, thank you for joining us here in the broadcast booth, and well done on the P3. We'll let you give a thanks or shout outs before we let you go.
Yeah, thanks for the broadcast, and thanks for all the races. Yeah, enjoyed it tonight.
And we certainly enjoyed from our perspective here in the commentary booth as well. Ian, well done on the P3, fittingly in that number 3 car, and looking forward to seeing you out there at Donington next time out.
Thank you. Good night.
That makes just the 2 of us in here. It took me a minute to understand. So that marks race 11, and I did a little bit of maths during interviews to let you know that championship points for the top 9 drivers are standing, split below with sub 2K. That means going into our finale, most of this is accurate as it stands, and there's a 1-point gap between Gunkowski, Med and Medma. Tufts fell back, he had a bad week, doesn't have the drop-off to rely on, so now he's going to have to scrap to get into that top 3 and hope that there's inconvenience in his way. And There's nothing that makes me more excited than National Donington. It is such a fun track rolling down that hill, terrifying stuff, and a real place to put the finale.
Yeah, that is going to be a super fun race to look forward to in 1 week's time here at Maconi Entertainment. I'm looking for a couple of things. Looking for great racing, looking to see how the drivers manage that shortened version of the track and that final chicane right at the end. I'm also looking to see if anyone will break the record that was set many moons ago of someone who managed to do 7 flips after hitting the outside curb down into that final chicane. I will see if anybody may be able to usurp that. If there's a way to end this season that's not a good way, that would be rather spectacular. But no, Donington going to be absolutely awesome to look forward to in 1 week's time here at Maconi Entertainment as we wrap up the season.
That's one thing to look out for sure, I assure you. We're back same time next week, and after the Week 13 break, we'll be back same time for the very next season. Thank you all very much for your support. Thank you very much to all the drivers. Very, very much to Ron Mons being with me the whole time. I've been Howie Burrows. Indeed, Ron. Ron at your best right there. I've been Howie Burrows, wishing you a great week.